So it's Sunday morning and today I'm going to be brewing a nice porter. I've done this one before and it's come out really well, so I'm just going to repeat the recipe. The recipe is going to be 3.9 kilograms of Marisotta, 665 grams of brown malt, 555 grams of crystal, 110 of chocolate and 250 of torrefied wheat. I'm going to be using homegrown Fuggle hops, which I've harvested from last year, so they're a year old, but they've been vac packed and kept in the freezer. So what I've done so far, well, I've got my mash tun. I've got 2 kettlefuls of boiling hot water in there just to pre-warm the tun so I don't get so much heat loss when I'm actually mashing. I've started weighing out my grain, just about to start milling my grain. I've got my sparge water on, not my sparge water, my mash water on. That's currently getting up to about 40 degrees, so that's nearly there. And so my first job at the moment is to really get this grain milled and then get ready for getting the mash on. So I've put about 14 litres of strike water in there at 77 degrees. Now I'm going to start doughing in with my grain bill. The grain bill is about 5.5 kilos. So 14 litres of strike water, 5.5 kilos of crushed grain going into this little pot. It's going to get quite tight, I think, when we get towards the top here. So we've done it before, so it should all fit. So just doughing in now, trying to get rid of all of the dough balls. This takes me a little while to do this, so what we'll do is we'll come back once we've finished. So there we go, we've got it all in. I always panic about that because when you fill it up with 14 litres of water and then you think I've got to fit all this grain in there, I don't know how it's going to fit, but it does, it always goes in. This is a 24 litre picnic cooler, so we'll get the pegs off the bag to stop it from slipping in, put the lid on, and then we're going to leave that for an hour, hoping that's going to be around about 66 to 67 degrees C when we get up. We'll have a look at it and adjust it if necessary. My next job now is to get the strike water on, prepare my hops, and then we'll get ready for getting the strike water or the wort out of the mash tun. So I'm just going to start preparing my hops now. So this is a Fuggle, homegrown Fuggle, back in my back garden from last year's crop. So what I do is I vacuum seal them and then freeze them, and it keeps them good all year long. So these are still probably going to be a bit frozen. Turn that on. I've only just really got them out of the freezer. It doesn't take long to thaw because the theory is there's not much water in them because we dried them out. So I've got about 100 grams there, which is about right. So if I break that in half, because my recipe calls for 50 grams at 60 minutes, 49 that I do. So 50 grams at 60 minutes and then another 50 grams towards the end of the boil, about 5-10 minutes to go. And that's what you really need for a porter. It's not a hop forward beer at all, it's all about the malt. This is just supposed to give it a bit of bittering. So I'll finish preparing those and then we'll have a look at the mash. So that's been an hour in the mash tun now. Temperature is still sitting at around about 67 degrees, so I'm really happy with that because that's not lost hardly any temperature at all over that 1 hour. So I'll take the lid off and I'm going to peg the corners of the bag so that I don't lose it when I'm draining out and refilling with more sparge water. So I'm going to pop a spoon just in front of the hole where the tap goes, just to allow the liquid to come out. I've got a hose going against the boiler, make sure that the tap on the boiler is off, and out it comes. And it's a real nice dark colour. Now I use a hose out rather than just pouring it straight from the tap in, because there's some people that say about something called hot side aeration. So when splashing too much and introducing too much oxygen before the boil is not good for it. I don't know whether that's true or not, but it doesn't really make a lot of difference to me whether I put a hose on there or not, so I just do it just in case. So I just keep that spoon in front of that tap just to allow all the liquid to come out, all the work to come out. I'm also going to tip this up and get as much of it out as possible before I introduce my sparge water, which is currently heating. I'll get my sparge water up to around about 77 degrees, and I do a batch sparge, so I don't fly sparge at all, only because I'm lazy to set it all up, and I get good results just using this method. So what I've got now is a load of dry grain in there. Just waiting for the sparge water to come up to 77 degrees, and then I'll be introducing some more of that into there. So my strike water's up to 77 degrees, so I'm just going to literally dump another load into there. I'll probably put into here around about 15 or 16 litres or so. See what I can get in here, depends how much I can squeeze in, and mix it all through like I'm doing now. Let it sit for about 5-10 minutes or so, just to rinse them grains through, drain that off, and then repeat until I've got, whoops, lose my spoon, a kettle full of water, boiler full of water down there, sorry, not water, boiler full of wort, ready for the boil. So I've finished mashing. I've got all that wort out of the mash tun into the boiler. So what I'll do now is I'll take these pegs off, lift the bag out, go and put the spent grains into my composter, and then clean the mash tun out. So I've now got the boiler switched on. I've got my boiler controller, everything's switched up to full. We're currently sitting at around about 66 degrees or thereabouts. It'll probably take about 15 minutes or so, maybe 20, to get up to a nice rolling boil, and we'll have another look at it then. As you can see, it's got a nice dark colour. I think you can see that. Looking really good so far. So we're up at 100 degrees. We're just starting to get a bit of a rolling boil going. You can see all the hot break on the top there. I'm controlling that hot break at the moment by adjusting the variable voltage controllers on the Brew controller, so I don't get a boil over. I find it's best to be patient with this bit. Just let the hot break come up. I then turn it down on the Brew controller. Let it boil simmer like this for a little bit. The hot break will then go back in. I just fold it back in with a spoon, like so. Some people like to skim it off. I don't. I have tried that in the past and just made a mess really, and didn't make any difference to my beer. So I'll just do this for a couple more minutes, and then once I've done that, I've then got my 50 grams of homegrown Fuggle in a muslin bag ready to go in there. And they're going to go in at 60 minutes, so they'll go in straight away, and we'll get the boil rolling. So you can see you've got quite a nice rolling boil going now. A lot of that hot break has dispersed back into the solution. So I'm now going to chuck my hops in. So they just go straight in like that, and then let that boil away for a good hour. With 15 minutes left to go, I'll put in some Irish moss, and I'll also put the chiller in there so I can sterilise and sanitise the chiller. So we'll come back at that point there. So I've got the chiller in with 15 minutes to go, and I've just put in 4 grams of Irish moss, which is a kettle fining, and we're still boiling away nicely. So 10 minutes to go, that's the second hop addition going in. Another 50 gram of Fuggle, and then in 10 minutes time we'll turn the power off, known as flame out, and then let it rest for a bit. So that's it, that's the hour boil up. So we'll turn off at the controller, and I'm just going to let that sit for about 5-10 minutes or so, and then I'll start the chilling process by turning on the tap and passing cold water through the coiled chiller, and try and get it down to pitching temperature for the yeast. So that's been set now for about 5 minutes, so we're now going to turn on the tap and then start the cooling process. This is going to take approximately, you can see it comes way along down into my sink, and that water is really hot. So yeah, this is probably going to take about 15-20 minutes, maybe a bit longer, depends how warm the tap water running through it's going to be. I'll pull out them hops, the 2 hot bags that are in there. I'll pull those out, and then this will come down in temperature to about 20 degrees, so I can then put it in the fermenter and then pitch the yeast. So down now to about 20 degrees, it's actually about 21 I think, just slightly over, but by the time I get it out of here and into my fermenter, it should be just about the right sort of pitching temperature for my yeast. So literally just open the tap, and I put everything into my fermenter, and I give it a really good sploshing and splashing and a really good airing as it goes in. This takes, I don't know, a couple of minutes just to do this, but I make sure I get a really good foam on the top, really splash it around. My fermenter has been cleaned out with BWP, rinsed out again about 3 or 4 times, and then I spray some Star San. I have one of these spray bottles loaded up with a load of Star San sanitizer. Spray it with that as well, and then just fill it up with this. Then this will go in the brew fridge. So there it is, all in the fermenter, ready to go. So I've taken, I've drawn off using my syringe a sample into the trial jar. Just going to let that foam calm down in there so I can then read that. So now the last thing to do before I put the lid on is put the yeast in. I'm using dry yeast. It's SO4, which is an English ale yeast, and I just sprinkle straight on the top. If you've watched my other videos, you'll see that this is what I do. I used to rehydrate, but then I found absolutely no difference to the quality of the beer or the taste of the beer from just pitching on the top. So now I just pitch on the top because I'm lazy. So that's all of that in there. So the last thing to do is just to crack the lid on, and again you'll see that I don't have an airlock on the top of my lid at all. So all I do is literally just crack it down around the outside, and I'm just going to leave at the front of the fermenter, just where you can grab hold of it there. I'll just leave that cracked ever so slightly. I've been doing this now for, I don't know, a couple of years like this. I started off with bubblers and airlocks and found that they weren't very reliable in as that they wouldn't bubble. And to be honest, bubbling's not the be all and end all. You can see where the fermentation's taking place, because you'll get a krausen at the top here. You get a lot of sediment coming up at the bottom. So I just crack it like that, and again, where it's going into a brew fridge, I don't have any problem with it. So that's now going to go into the brew fridge, and then we'll see what the specific gravity reading was. So there we are in the brew fridge. So I'll shut that up. I've got the Inkbird set at 19 degrees, and it's thereabouts there now. So the specific gravity reading on that was 1.060, which is about 5 points ahead of, or above where it should be. So really pleased with that. So we'll leave that in there for a couple of weeks, and I won't even touch it. I'll have a look tomorrow morning just to make sure that fermentation started, and then we'll leave it for 2 weeks and then get it out of the fermenter and into a keg.